Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So today we are looking at the meta and some of the early shifts that have come up on the market as a direct result of the ban list. Obviously it's still early as we don't even have the deck list from any events released as of yet. But it's always important for us to try to reason out for ourselves what the upcoming meta is going to look like so that we can prepare for it as best as we can. So today we take a look at some of the shifts that are going on the market over the last couple of days as everyone scrambles to try and figure out what the next best decks will be for this upcoming format. Let's get started. Okay, so first up, we're going to take a look at Virtual World Lulu, which is currently sitting pretty steady at the $20 price point. So before the ban list, we kind of saw Lulu between the $14 to $18 mark, and I think that people may have been okay with moving their Lulus at that slightly lower price point because they were afraid that True King of All Calamities was going to get banned on the December 2020 ban list, and therefore the deck just might not be as good. However, as we now know, True King wasn't hit while Noble Knights and Dragon Link were, and Virtual World is definitely poised to be one of the best decks of the upcoming format. I know I made a mistake early on thinking that this was going to be like a $5 card, but obviously we now know much more about the deck than we did back then. Back then we were speculating about a brand new deck that had proven absolutely nothing, whereas now we're looking at a proven established deck that just had two of its biggest competitors removed from the game. Now that being said, Lulu is only around $20 at the moment, but if Virtual World establishes itself as a tier 0.5 to tier 1 deck, and that is confirmed by the results of some larger scale tournaments, then I definitely do think that Lulu has the potential to increase up to the $25, maybe even $30 mark as an ultra rare from the most recent core set, where that core set lacks a lot of value outside of a couple of cards. If you're looking to play Virtual World during this early 2021 format, I would definitely look to pick up your copies of Lulu now before some results and deck lists are released and the card eventually spikes in price. Next up, another domino that has fallen thanks to True King not getting banned, we have XYZ Encore. So this card was talked about a bit before as a side deck option that is one of the few true answers to True King of All Calamities, and with True King not getting banned on the December 2020 list, it has spiked up in price a little bit. Now this card is really only good against True King of All Calamities and basically has no other applications in the meta otherwise, but it's one of the few answers that you can actually play. Even cards like Infinite Impermanence fall short when dealing with True King of All Calamities because your opponent can chain the effect of Chuchi to pop the True King and ensure that its effect resolves without being negated by Impermanence. Now I don't know if XYZ Encore is a good enough answer to the Virtual World deck, or if you'd maybe just be better off running cards like Artifact Lancia or Dimension Shifter to try to stop them from getting True King out at all in the first place. So we'll kind of have to see some tournament results for that. This card does only have two ultra rare printings, the original from Judgment of the Light and a Megaton reprint, both of which are about at the $7 mark. Personally, I would rather side other things against Virtual World, especially because there are lines of play in the Virtual World deck where you can make multiple copies of True King of All Calamities on the same turn, so maybe XYZ Encore isn't as great of an option if Virtual World players adapt their strategies around XYZ Encore. I'm definitely expecting this card to be reprinted as an OTS Super or Common, or maybe in the upcoming March reprint set, so with better side deck options available, I would be looking to move this card as soon as possible. So one of the other decks that survived the ban list completely unscathed is Zodiac, a deck that is often mixed with other engines such as the Eldritch or the Dogmatica. Now in Zodiac Eldritch, which is an incredibly popular variant that's running around, people are running multiple copies of Kumongous in the side deck. Now the idea here is pretty simple. Like Gameciel, it falls under 2500 attack points, so Eldritch is still going to be able to run over it if you have to put it onto your opponent's field. However, if you're going to summon a Kaiju to your own field, you are better off having Kumongous out than Gameciel or a bigger Kaiju, because Kumongous is an earth monster. This allows you to go into Asa the Earth Charmer Immovable, which can fetch you a Zodiac monster out of your deck when she is destroyed by your opponent. Now this is a very specific application, but of course that small difference can be the difference between winning and losing at a big event. So in Zodiac Kaiju, if you're siding or maining a Kaiju, you want to have Kumongous available. Now in terms of price, the supers have gotten quite expensive, up at $14 to $15 each at the moment. However, even the rares are up at $3 each, and there are extremely few quantities available on TCG Player, so a lot of potential for these to spike up in price as well. Obviously, Kaijus are still really useful in today's game, able to get rid of negates like Appaloosa or Herald of Perfection, so I'm really fond of them. If you want to play Zodiac Eldritch, I would look at grabbing the rares relatively quickly, because there are such few quantities of them available. I'm expecting them to hit the $7 to $8 mark each fairly soon. However, I do think it's only a matter of time before we see it get another accessible reprint, hopefully in either a structure deck like Radiant or in a dual Devastator type product like Gameciel. Another deck that was untouched to the surprise of a lot of people was Dinosaurs. I feel like in 95% of the banlist predictions that I saw, Miscellaneousaurus was going to 1, with a lot of people thinking that dinos were too strong and needed to be hit. However, this clearly isn't the case, as Dinosaurs did end up not getting hit at all by the ban list. Because of this, people are looking at Dinos as a top contender this format, very possibly going to be tier 1, and Archosaur was bought out as a direct result. Now, while most of the dinosaur cards are fairly cheap as they came out in a structure deck, Archosaur is the one that kind of sticks out, as it's the one piece that's quite expensive as a secret rare from a relatively new set that supports a tier 1 deck. While this card was only around $40 before, it is now up at $55 to $60 a piece, with barely any copies available on TCG Player at the moment. Now, to be fair, there might still be some uncertainty. We don't know how decks like Drytron or Evil Twin will affect how dinosaurs do in the upcoming meta. So maybe if they make dinosaurs less strong, they phase dinosaurs out a little bit, then dinos will fall off and Archosaur will go back down in price. However, I do think that the new decks aren't going to be anything too crazy, and we should expect to see Dinosaurs as a top tier deck this format, and therefore I am expecting Archosaur to stay relatively steady at around the $50 mark until closer to its expected reprint in the 2021 Megatins. Alright, so a card that I want to briefly mention here is Manju of the 10,000 Hands. So Manju has a ton of different reprints, but I feel like Manju is a lot like Allure of Darkness or Foolish Burial Goods. Regardless of how many times it gets reprinted, and no matter what rarity, even the cheap common versions always end up being worth a couple of bucks. We are looking at Manju here because it is a card that can be used in the Drytron deck, a strategy that doesn't really use its normal summon at all otherwise. However, Manju is an option because you can search it off of Benton when Benton is tributed, and then it itself can search for Benton, Herald, or a ritual spell from your deck. It's kind of like if you're not going to use your normal summon anyways, you can use it on this card and get the search for free. Anyways, the DT version of this card is widely regarded as the card's highest rarity, and it is currently about $10 at the moment. It was higher back in Necroz's format, but over the last couple of years, it has kind of fallen under the radar, especially with the release of the Incantations. However, the card does have many different super rare and common printings, and despite all of those reprints, every version of the card is like at least $3 each, which is kind of crazy. It's definitely something that you'll want to dig out of your bulk and offload, because it'll be a card that players who are interested in Drytron will probably want to pick up, though we don't know 100% yet if it's something that should be played in the optimal version of the deck. Next up, we have Droll and Lockbird. Specifically, we're looking at the ultimate rare version. So with the release of the Drytron deck in Genesis Impactors, Droll could actually be a really strong side deck card once again. Against Drytrons, resolving it basically ends the turn for the Drytron player, but it's also a really solid card against Dogmatica Invoked as well. It does have other situational applications in the meta, but those two decks are the ones that it's really good against. Anyways, it isn't like it was before, where we had very limited printings of Droll, and all of them were like $15 each. We actually have really affordable versions from the Order of the Spellcasters structure deck and Maximum Gold, so you should definitely be able to find them if you need them for relatively cheap. However, here we are looking specifically at the ultimate rare, which is currently over $90 a piece on TCG Player at the moment. I definitely think that this is kind of a ridiculous price, but as a generic hand trap that will rotate in and out of formats, we kind of should have expected this to happen, as the card hasn't seen too much play in the last year or so. If you happen to own the ultimate rare copy of Droll and Lockbird, I would definitely consider selling them soon and playing the golds or something else for now. You can very easily wait for this card to rotate back out of the format and buy them back at a much more affordable price. Another card I want to briefly mention here is Union Carrier. So with the banning of Dragonbuster Destruction Sword, I feel like Union Carrier has kind of fallen off a bit. We are seeing a ton of quantities being listed at around the $7 mark, with people offloading their extra copies, and it is kind of understandable. The Buster Lock was one of the best ways to abuse Union Carrier, so without this card in the game, that's the primary application of Union Carrier that is no longer available. However, I definitely think that Union Carrier is the type of card that is going to be abused by something in the future, so it's a card that I would definitely be looking at picking up now, while everyone is kind of turning a blind eye to it. I think that the card is a really amazing pickup if you can get them for around $4 to $5 each in cash, or maybe $6 to $7 in trade, especially while no one is paying too much attention to it. We will probably see this card used in something moving forward, though I don't know necessarily if that's going to be with the Mist Valley Thunderbird Infinite Negate loop, or in something like ABCs, or with a card like Ava. So yeah, this isn't a card that I would be throwing everything at its current price, right? There's still a chance that it could get reprinted, which would negatively affect its value. But if you can pick this card up passively whenever you find someone who just doesn't care about the card as much anymore, I think that this card makes a really great hold while we wait for the next deck or strategy that is able to abuse it. Another card to really briefly touch on here is Ally of Justice Cycle Reader. So back in ABC format, this card did see some side deck play because it's effectively 2 copies of DD Crow in one if you're banishing light monsters. Back then, you could banish multiple copies of the same letter to make it so that your opponent couldn't summon out ABC. Well, in today's format, apparently there is talk about potentially using this card against the Drytron strategy, as they would no longer be able to summon the Drytron monsters out of the graveyard, and it can also really randomly banish Eldritch from your opponent's graveyard as well. Overall, I do think that this is cute, and technically it works, but it's way too situational of an application for this card to see much meta play at all, and it's something that's probably going to fall off pretty quickly. At any rate, it's only the DT version which was bought out, and there's basically no copies of it available on TCG Player at the moment, though there are still several copies of each of the super printings available for under $1 each or so. If you're really paranoid about not having this card, go ahead and pick up a set of the supers, though I don't think this card is going to see much play. This is definitely something that I would try to offload as soon as possible while it is hyped up, at least if you're actually able to find someone who's willing to pay up for it. The final card that I want to talk to you guys about today briefly is Ice Dragon's Prison, a card that actually just got bought out for like the 5th time or something crazy like that. At the moment, there is one available for sale at like $28, but it's posted by a relatively new account. And then after that, you're stuck paying $35 for a near mint copy of Ice Dragon's Prison, which is kind of ridiculous. I think that we all know about how great this card can be, and I think it's literally the best generic trap card that you can be playing in the game at the moment. Against combo decks, it performs double duty by banishing a card from the graveyard and a card on the field at the same time, and then against an engine like the Eldritch or the Zodiac that's maybe a little bit slower, it can completely shut off a portion of the engine. I think that with Linkross banned, we are in such a slower format, one that's much more control oriented, which has directly resulted in a spike in the demand and price of Ice Dragon's Prison. So right now, it's at $35 with very few quantities available on the market. I don't know what people are even going to be listing it at tomorrow. The card has seen so many buyouts, it's really anybody's guess. If we get the LCS results tomorrow or Monday, and we find out that everyone is playing 2 to 3 copies of this card between the main and the side deck, then it could very easily be a $45 to $50 card. Realistically though, given this repeated buyout trend and how good the card actually is, I think that seeing it fluctuate between the $30 to $40 range is actually fairly reasonable. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. I'm super excited for this upcoming format. I think that with Linkross and the Dragon Buster Lock and Smoke Grenade all gone, the format is just so much healthier. I do wish that True King was gone as well, but we will see just what the virtual world deck is able to do moving forward. Make sure that you guys keep an eye out for tournament results under the new list whenever they do come out. They will give us a really good idea of what to expect from the format moving forward, and therefore what cards you guys should be looking to buy, sell, or trade for as soon as possible. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed today's Market Watch episode, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me and let me know. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what else is going on with the market that maybe I missed or didn't cover, so I can cover it in a future video to keep you guys as informed as possible. Also, if you haven't already for whatever reason, make sure you hit the subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.